for the discussion. And the first order of business in the discussion segment would be to ask the three presenters, Dr. Frey or Dr. George Enderle or Karen Neng, to comment on any of the ideas in the other two papers that they heard with us this afternoon. So the floor is now open. I will disappear. Yes.
Yes. I would like to make a comment to philanthropy, being the love of humanity. I think that is a wonderful idea and we are all for it. But that's always dangerous. If everybody agrees, then I think one overlooks important issues. And one is, there is a lot of bureaucracy when money is handed out. We have seen the scandals in various organizations, private organizations, who hand out money. A large part of the money disappears somewhere in corrupt channels, or one of the examples was to get sex from the recipients. I think, and Enderle has pointed that out very nicely, we must also look at the motivation of people. And if you go to a developing country and have millions of dollars or euros to hand out, you are in a powerful position. And then these scandals and these very bad consequences arise. We know from government development aid that it did not help the countries who received it. They didn't have a better economic development. So I think we are all for philanthropy, but we should really very critically discuss and look at the effects.
That everybody agrees with you on that we ought to look critically at philanthropy. What difference would, let's say your FOCJ idea make? How would that reduce bureaucracy, scandal, and corruption in the distribution of philanthropies? Bruno.
Oh, I don't know. I think I did not suggest that the whole discussion should be on money. That was a little bit what Karen emphasized. She discussed how much money flows to good causes, but I don't know. No, I just wanted to suggest that she also looks at the consequences if somebody has the power to distribute money. Otherwise, the results are, I'm afraid, irrelevant or even negative for the recipients.
Karen, would you like to respond?
Yes, maybe.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's okay? Okay, I think if I totally agree what Bruno is trying to emphasizing. This is this is a reality. Just now I mentioned that I read a book called Just Giving by Rob Wright. Okay, later on I can show you the book. The book is in my bag. Actually, he already giving a lot of solutions, suggestions how to avoid the consequence that Bruno just mentioned. But for us, because we are from a religion society, so that's why most of the time we will use our channel to manage it, to ensure the money is going to the right person. This is what we are doing at the moment. Because most of our supporting money will go to China. Okay, and then we are using because in China, I totally agree, even the money from the Red Cross, they go to China, they cannot go to the white person. Okay, but this is something that we cannot avoid, but cannot stop us doing supporting to the minority.
George, did you want to say
Yeah.
something?
Yeah. Well, first, a short comment to Bruno Frey's analysis. And as I said, I fully agree that institutions are extremely important. And that's again important also with regard to philanthropy, you know. But as I indicated very just as a side remark, you know, the definition where the problem lies is an important question. And in the Catholic Church, I mean, who makes the decision to change the role of women in the Catholic Church? Is that at the local parish level, or is that in Rome, or etc.? And of course, for this, we need a lot of devil's advocate to do that. This is just a remark. But the second point to Karen, I do think that philanthropy is an important part of also of the economy. But to be clear about the potential on the one hand and the limitations of philanthropy on the other hand is very, very important. And as you may know, well, a pioneer of philanthropy in the United States was, of course, Andrew Carnegie. And Andrew Carnegie wrote a book, The Gospel of Wealth. It's a highly interesting book. And he said basically, first, private businessmen and women, well, only men at that time, should make as much money as possible. And at the end of their lives, they should have given away all that money for philanthropy and public libraries, etc. But at the same time, he asked the police to crack down on his workers when they protested, you know. And so philanthropy has to be looked in the context of the whole issue of the impact of a company and the business leader, and not just it's good for philanthropy. You know, Enron gave a lot of money to concerts in the headquarters, I think, in Houston, but on the other side, they cheated and did all kinds of things. So again, I'm in favor of philanthropy, but the limitations should be very clear. A second point, we have serious problems of philanthropy in South Bend, Indiana, where I live, and NGOs and private organizations, they did a lot of good things for homeless people. But we pushed the mayor of the city that the city has to play a coordinating role. He has to watch about the public good of health on those encampments and in the city. And it's not enough that some philanthropic organizations do a good job. And finally, he understood that. But we need, I mean, the public realm is extremely important, and philanthropy cannot replace that. It has to complement it.
Okay, we've heard from all three speakers, but we now, Stefan has given me this from Andrea, who I believe is right there in Macau. And the statement is this: I like the definition of philanthropy as giving one's time, talent, and treasure for humanity. My question is, how do we strike a balance between handout and self-reliance and self-sufficiency? I assume that Karen may want to speak to that, but the others of you may want to say something as well. So how do we strike a balance between a handout and self-reliance and self-sufficiency? And that, by the way, was from Andrew So.
Okay. I think this is a very good question, how to make the balance. To be honest, just give us a small example of our business that we are doing. Actually, I thank you for George and Bruno's suggestion. Actually, now we're having a small funding, okay, supporting some of the educations in China, okay. Another, okay. So for us, every year we have a sum of money, and then we have a dedicated person to distribute the money in China. That's what we are doing. This is because, to be honest, just now I'm trying to share is one organization, all the money being dominated by one person, because that person can monitor the money and also the effect. So every year, maybe we have 10 or 20, now we have 20 people, we are supporting them, and then they will give us their report on their education journey. This is what we are doing. And now we are thinking to make it even a more structured organization. Okay, this is what, and then, so that's why I'm trying to understand more how to make it more efficient and getting more resources.
Okay, I see a hand from George. George, do you have a comment? Unmute, George.
Okay, now, yes. Well, I think that opposition of handout and self-sufficiency, of course, is helpful to be kept in mind. But I mean, if you look at, say, philanthropic or organizations which are smart, they want to involve those people who benefit from their donations involved in the decision-making process for the projects. And so that means the handout is not just given from abroad, and then they can do with that money whatever they want. But those people who get the money are involved in the decision process to some extent. And I think for me, still the model of Mohamed Yunus and microcredit is a very good indication how to do that, how he empowered those women in Bangladesh to use their money which they got from the bank, the loans, reasonably, and those women got the support from the community, etc. So I mean, that's an important point which I want to emphasize. Just giving money to, and as Bruno Frey emphasized, the power, the power dimension in that process of philanthropy is enormously important.
Okay, Bruno? Yes, Bruno.
Yes, thanks.
There you are.
Good. I so much agree with what George Enderle said. I think to just give money is not good. The people who receive it and who give it must be involved, and that is the public democratic aspect. And to just speak about money-giving institutions is necessary, but certainly doesn't capture the most important point. But if you allow, I would like to go back to 2 points George Enderle made before. Namely, the first is that about public goods. I found that these comments very important. Namely, that economic theory has a wrong theory of public goods. As you said, Samuelson suggested on the basis of a mathematical model that people don't contribute to public goods. And that's wrong, empirically wrong, when we see young people now who are not paid try to improve or engage in trying to improve the natural environment. They don't get any money for it. They are not they are not forced to do that. They do it because they find the issue important. So we must have a new economic theory about public goods, namely, when do people contribute to a public good and when is that not the case? My second point is George Enderle's critique of traditional economics. You said that it didn't take into account the environment. I would like to disagree, because 45 years ago already, I wrote a booklet on the economics of the environment. And there I suggested with many, many other people that those people and those firms that damage the environment must pay for it, must be taxed to the extent that they do that. And such a policy really is effective, because especially firms don't want to compare the advantages of damaging the environment versus the tax they have to pay if they do. And empirical evidence clearly shows that the firms reduce damaging the environment to a very large extent. And moreover, there will be the tax money received can be used for other purposes in the environmental field. Thank you.
George, unmute, George. Unmute.
Okay. Yes. Well, I know your literature, and you know I was also in St. Gallen when Hans Christoph Binswanger talked about the environment 30, 40 years ago. And I remember also in California in the 1960s, environment was a topic, and so I did not want to minimize those contributions. But what I wanted to say is that today we have now metrics from the International Financial Institution, I don't remember the name, metrics which can be used and are used by investors and companies and multinationals to better include the environmental impact the company has. And I think that is a step forward. And that should be even more emphasized, as you suggested, with well, support by the government, so with taxes, say on oil, or with support with subsidies on renewable resources. So I fully agree. With regard to a public good that individuals can contribute, I also fully agree. I must say, in a way, my understanding of public good is slightly different from that what Samuelson said in the 50s. You know, it is. I think that, or for me, a public good, and as opposed or in contrast to a private good, is a formal distinction. And formal distinction means not a material or substantive distinction. And the two criteria are non-exclusivity and non-rivalry. And so, I mean, the traditional example of public goods is I think it's a lighthouse for the shipping industry, that the lighthouse gives light or orientation to all the ships which pass by, you know. So when one ship benefits from that lighthouse, another ship, the consumption is not reduced, etc. And so from that I start and apply that also to social capital and human capital and other, and of course economic and natural capital. But this is a little bit a theoretical question. But I mean, what I want to emphasize is that for public goods we need other regarding motivations. And other regarding means, say, philanthropy or individual young people are not doing fighting against climate change because they want to make more money in the future. They want to change that situation. And this is an example of other regarding good which is necessary to produce public goods.
Okay, we've had a rich discussion so far among our three presenters. I'm wondering, are there any other people, you know, right there in Macau who would like to get into this discussion? If there are any, please let us know. But here's something for you. I was thinking as I was listening to Karen that philanthropy, as she described it, is a dimension of wealth creation as George has outlined it, rather than a distribution of wealth after it is created. Now that unlocks, it seems to me, a lot, and also helps reinforce the emphasis in Karen's presentation, the emphasis on, you know, asset management that is empowering groups for more effective participation in society. So it seems to me that there is a way those work together. The other point that I would make is that I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that what George had to say at a more philosophical or abstract level about wealth creation in general, there's nothing that in George's proposal that would, you know, contradict, you know, what Bruno has given us in his two concrete procedural or practical suggestions about organizational reconstruction, so that there may be a high range of applicability to George's general perspective on wealth creation, one instance of which might go in the direction of what Bruno has said. It also tends to reinforce what Karen has said. So where are we? Do we have other questions from anyone?
Yes, I have a question, please. We have a widening gap between the rich and the poor. So how to resolve this, please? Because the system seems to have failed. What I'm talking about is a widening gap between the rich and the poor. It's becoming every year more and more so. So how to narrow this gap? Because the system, capitalism, seems to have gone absolutely crazy. So how can we make all this money and yet still have so many poor people in the world? And huge wealth controlled by very few. Thank you.
Christoph Stuckelberger is certainly in the group. Is there a way to make sure that he wants to make a point in this conversation about philanthropy? So certainly, Christoph, if you can hear me, it is up to you to unmute and to start your video. Are you there, Christoph?
Thank you. Yes, thank you, all of you, for these very good contributions. I would like to just to make a comment on the philanthropy side. I think the developments are so that the philanthropy part is now very much under scrutiny and control. So the mechanisms that Bruno Frey described have been in some cases justified in the past. But I think today philanthropy institutions are at least as much controlled and in, let's say, in OECD countries as private companies or public institutions. So there is not a difference in level of mismanagement compared to the other sectors. Also in China. I mean, if we look at I visited the Philanthropy Center in Tsinghua University, the Philanthropy Association and Monitoring in Beijing. So there is a lot of development in the last 20 years in China, where they had to build up the whole system, it's true. So a bit behind the Western world because the state was providing all these services, but it's much improving also in terms of quality control and all the rest. I think in that sense, we should not punish now or be mistrustful against philanthropy part. My problem is more that now there is a shift from donations to investments. I'm just 10 days ago, we created a new foundation called Oikos Invest Foundation, where it is focused on investments, but based on donation money in order to improve the impact, as Bruno Frey and George Enderle said. But the problem is that now with all this hype of impact investing, we have the same problem that we need to be very careful in terms of implementation and control of that, because it's a bit the fashion now to say investing is fine and donation is out. I think we need still both. Very often we need donation, philanthropy donation as a start also for then impact investing. I just want to show this relation between donation, investment, and also, of course, state regulations in order to make it sustainable and not corrupt free, but corrupt monitored, so to say. Thank you.
Okay, before we take a break, thank you very much, Christoph. Before we take a break, I have one other message that's come in over here. And that is from Andrew So. It says, Ignatius pedagogy has made a great impact on education. How about creating a pedagogy on ecology or environmental concerns? Now, I believe some of that will be discussed tomorrow in some of the presentations. But right now, we are at the time for a break for about 15 minutes. Is there anything further that needs to be said here other than thank you all for your participation in this session? Once again, thank you very much.
And one very short comment. I know the Ignatian education because I went through those processes and so on. What I learned is really to look at issues from an interdisciplinary point of view. You know, if you want to address ecological challenges, you need not only understand them, but also to have a philosophical understanding what is right and wrong, or and so to walk on two legs, on an analytical, descriptive leg, so to speak, and the ethical, cognitive. And I learned that from the Jesuit education, and I'm very grateful for that.
Okay, thank you, George. I think there are many of us who would want to salute in that direction as well. So we will take a break now.